Welcome back to the Green Talk, where we explore tools, technology, and taking shaping the future of the green industry. I'm your host, Misrain Mata, and today we got a special guest who knows this business from the ground up, literally. Paul Culclasure is with us today to talk about something fundamental: soil health, and why we may need to rethink how we build entire programs around it. Paul, welcome to the Green Talk.
Thanks for having me, Misra. Looking forward to it. I know you and I talk soul health a lot, so it'll be good to put this in a recording and share it with all our counterparts out there, and love to hear some feedback from our conversation today. So looking
Sure
forward to it.
thing. Sure thing. And like you mentioned it, we talk about soil testing and
hmm
inputs and more. But just jumping right into it, what's the difference between, or not really a difference, but most of the time we just treat the symptoms and
Right.
not really addressing what's going on beneath the surface. So what really we can do in the industry to change this behavior, in your opinion?
So kind of the initial conversation I have, and this goes back to my days in the golf world as well. Yeah, grass is going to show us problems. Whether that's wilting or disease spots or, insect damage, we can see the surface issues all the time. But sometimes if you just treat, I guess, reactively, you end up feeling like you're chasing your tail sometimes. You'll cure one problem and then a new one arises because you've either cured like a nematode infestation. A lot of times a secondary fungal infection will come after that. So kind of what I started doing back in my career, and the best, I guess the easiest way for me to say it is like when you go to a doctor for the first time, right? You get a new family practice doctor. Um, and you can look at me and probably tell me, yeah, you should probably go to the gym a little bit more. It's easy to grab things right off the front, right? But if I go to a doctor and he's like, hey, I think we should try some diabetes medicine. I don't know that you have diabetes, but let's just try it and see what happens because, you're in your 40s and maybe you have diabetes. Well, I'm going to ask some questions at that point, right? Before I start taking medicine. Like, hey, why don't we figure out if I actually have that before we start throwing stuff at me? And so the first thing they're going to do is they're going to take a blood sample. Now I'll pass out and we can have a whole nother conversation about me and needles, but they're going to do that, right? They're going to take a blood sample and, off of that blood sample, they'll be able to look at deficiencies and things that I may have. And so that's kind of the easiest way I equate that to turf health. We can look at the surface and we can figure some things out, but if you take a soil sample, you can figure out a lot of things on nutrient deficiency. Even just looking at the soil sample when you pull a probe out of the ground will tell you some stuff. So, I think it's easy to just walk on a piece of property, see a brown spot and just, it looks like a brown patch. Let's start treating brown patch. And then you just kind of roll from there. There's to give it, the obvious, fertilizations that you typically need on a Bermuda lawn, for example. But if you just start rolling into that, you may amplify a problem that's there that you don't know about. And I think you should always, especially the first time on a property, take a soil probe, pull the soil probe, look at the soil, and then send that off and get some diagnostics done. And then you really know what you have, you know what you're dealing with. And we'll talk about this later in the conversation, I'm sure, but you end up saving yourself money over time too, instead of throwing things that it doesn't need. So, I hope that answers the question, but that's kind of how
Yeah,
I
no.
look at it.
Yeah, no, yeah, for sure. Is
So,
understanding exactly what's going on
mhm,
in the base. And when we talk about building programs,
mhm,
church programs around soil health,
mhm.
what are we really talking about? How would you define that? Building programs around soil health. Health.
Okay. So, um, we'll take a new development, for example. And oftentimes when they build these new large communities and we're seeing it all over the Southeast down here, right? It's a new community, I think, goes up every week. The first thing they do is strip everything off the top. So unfortunately, and I understand there's a need to do that to build, but they're taking all the good stuff away. When they do that, they're taking all that topsoil, all that stuff that whatever that was before, whether it was a wood, a forest or a field or all the stuff that we need to grow turf in is getting stripped off and hauled out of there. So we inherit a piece of property and they throw sod on top, and then now it's yours to take care of. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to pull a soil sample. We send it off to the lab. They'll send back a baseline of, typically it's phosphorus, it's potassium, there's some micronutrients that we look at, the pH of the soil, and we take those numbers and, in our region, it's always phosphorus that's needed. It's always, we see calcium in a lot of cases that's needed. But we are initially we start trying to provide everything that turf product plant's going to need to be successful from the start. Now that's the dream scenario. A lot of times you'll get a piece of property that's been treated for 10 years before you got it. So then you sometimes have to undo some things that have been done. So taking what's needed and building the program based on what it tells us it needs in the soil is how we kind of start that program. And like I said, down here, I can almost guess every time it'll be potassium and a few other things.
Right. And that program, shift or change based on the season, like
It does.
growing season. So treating soil or focusing on soil health, it doesn't stop on growing season only, right? I mean, it goes around the year.
A lot of, so if calcium, and even like some organics that we've done before, a lot of times your off season's kind of your prime spot for those, where you can move the needle typically we'll call it the November through March timeframe, in a high sodium environment where our water's full of sodium. We get a lot of natural rainfall. We're not having to irrigate with that bad water in those months. So we can take that off season, as they call it, and really start moving the needle on some of those other nutrients that the rainwater and the natural, irrigation from above will give us, to kind of flush that sodium out and put the good stuff back in. So yeah, absolutely. It's a year round. And when you're in summer survival mode, you don't have time to really focus on amendments. So I do like that off season for that, to kind of call it setting the table for the summer. We set
Right.
the table in the off season, and then we roll through the summer, and then we reassess in the fall, and we reset the table for next year. So
And
it's a
what
year
does
round approach.
I'm sorry. Yeah,
No, you're
yeah.
good. Yeah, yeah.
It's a process that it takes time,
It
and
does.
that's kind of my next question or comment is, you and I talk about different properties in different situations, but what does a soil health program looks like across the season? Like obviously based on the issues you're having is how many applications you need or for how long. But like the average program that either you did in the past in your experience or that that someone is doing out there, what's kind of a program looks like on real life applications and timing?
Okay, so let's take a property that has typical irrigation in this area. Going to be a high pH. Oftentimes there's a pretty good bit of sodium. And so we'll look at the irrigation source. We'll sample that when we sample the soil. And so when I build a program for a customer, I'm also going to look at, all right, so June, July, and August, they're going to be running more of that irrigation typically, just is what it is down here. So those are the months that we're going to focus on combating sodium, combating things that we don't want, and providing nutrient for the growing season. Because our warm season turf, we really have 4 to 5 months to focus on, the health of the turf plant before we start cooling back off in the fall. So summertime is, if we can fix some soil issues, we'll go for that. But more, we're focusing on what the plant needs to be healthy. If we think we're getting some sodium in there, we'll flush it. I like to use gypsum and a wetting agent once a month when we're using that poor irrigation water to kind of push that sodium through the profile. And then we're back feeding that with the nutrients that we're missing. So we flush the bad stuff out. And then 2 or 3 weeks later, we're coming back with the potassium, a little bit of nitrogen, depending on the turf, centipede, we kind of lower that nitrogen down. Bermuda loves it. So we bump that nitrogen up for the Bermuda grass. And then, so it's kind of a rinse and repeat, all through the summer. Then like I said, when we get into the fall and the winter, we're going to look at, all right, here's what we combated in the summer. Here's what our soil test told us. We're going to take these amendments and put in some of the dolomitic limes, for example, calcitic limes. They're really slow to break down. So that's a good time of year to get them in the soil and let them start working and have them ready for you in the spring. And then when we come out of the spring, we assess what the winter did to us, and we start putting nutrients in the soil, lower on the end, a little higher on the phosphorus, maybe in that one little March, April time frame, and then start putting our nutrients back in for summer health. So it's a battle kind of in the summer is what it feels like, and then we take a breath in the fall and reset for the next year. So
That sounds very solid.
yeah,
A
yeah,
very solid program.
yeah,
And
and I get it with the more touches you can get on a property, the better. It helps you assess, but I try to focus on a 8 round program is kind of a sweet spot, I think, for most landscapers. If you're a homeowner, every week you got 52, chances to go out there and take a look at it. So just different depending on the situation is how we build the programs.
right. And for many landscapers out there, like especially on the commercial side of the industry, um, you know, clients, customers want results like yesterday, right?
Mm-hmm.
Once you start talking to them about the soil health and the process and everything else is too much. They just
Mm-hmm.
want to see green grass, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
healthy turf. But
Mm-hmm.
at the end, the long run, really focusing on what is happening underneath on the soil, the health of the soil, will help to get more permanent benefits or
Absolutely.
results, right?
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
And something that I'm thinking and crossed my mind early today was about the amount of product that has been used on the ground, on the in the commercial area. So if we focus our efforts more on soil health
Mm-hmm.
and we make sure the health is healthy, that means that we will need less product, right? To to make sure the surface is there in the optimal conditions. Is that correct? You kind of
It
follow me?
is. It is. And it's, what we're trying to mimic in our turf world is, maybe you look at a plain and a prairie grass in Kansas, right? That's an ecosystem that's been there for 100 years or more. And it's self-sustaining for the most part. But it's got an established system of, soil microbiology, and, the turf is allowed to grow up to a certain, a height that, and then you have to add, and I could go down a road here that maybe is another podcast, but you add in like the bison that come in and they feed and they end up fertilizing the soil. There's a really cool little side plug here, but there's a really cool movie called it's called The Lunatic Farmer. It's a guy in Virginia that has basically self-sustained his farm off of cattle, moving his cattle from pasture to pasture, and then he follows it with chicken houses, and the chickens feed on the cattle droppings and then scatter it as a fertilizer. And as you know, chicken compost makes a great fertilizer. So then they're also fertilizing as they're doing their thing. And I'm a fertilizer guy, so this is hard to say, but he hasn't bought a bag of fertilizer in 22 years. But he's done what he's done is mimic that ecosystem, like out in the plains. And that's kind of what we're trying to do here, right? We're trying to do everything we can to set the grass up for everything it needs in the soil nutrient wise. Healthier turf equals less disease, better resistance to insect pressure, and overall just turf health. A healthier turf resists weeds too, because you got a dense canopy. Weeds can't come up. So the joke we have is, we at my company, we focus on turf health or soil health. I don't know if you remember a commercial back in the 90s. It was the Train dealer. The Train's this air conditioned system. And the joke was, or maybe I think it's the Maytag repairman. Like he never gets to go on repair calls because the Maytag's such a good machine. And we kind of joke at Verine's, like, if we're doing this to where like our clients won't need us as much as, but we offering solutions to them, right? We're helping them, fix the overall system, and then we can focus on some other fun things like, uh, deeper roots, better roots, and all the good stuff without having to chase our tails all the time. So healthy turf is the best resistance to any pest that you have out there. 100%.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. Totally
um,
agree with that.
yeah.
Yeah.
So if you can get that soil where it works for you, it'll do,
It
it'll
will
do a lot.
life easier for sure.
Yeah. It'll
Life
be your
easier.
best. So a good soul is your best employee is what I always kind of say. So
Yeah. And do you talk? We talk about soil testing. How
mhm.
often landscaper should be testing, or homeowner should be testing the soil, just to kind of have a good idea of what's going on. How often, or the average time during the season or year?
Yeah, it's a good question. So what I like to do is the first time you're on the property, if that's at all possible, get a soil test. You buy a new house and you want to start taking care of your yard, take a soil test. And then based on that, so if we get a soil test back and we're, would say, average to good, um, we might need to add a few nutrients in there. Maybe the organic matter's, so low that we need to put some composted chicken manure in, or we need to put something in there. And once we get it to that, what I would call on a scale of 10, a 7 and above, once a year's plenty. But if we do a soil test that first time and it's a 1 or a 2 and we've got problem here, problem there, your water's no good, then I think 3 times a year is probably a better number. You just want to check in from time to time until we get to that point. Maybe we'll get to that 7, 8, 9 on a scale. But so it's just kind of the same. Going back to my doctor reference, if you're super sick, you're going to be coming back a lot more to get tested and checked. If you're not really sick, hey, come back and see me next year and we'll do another physicals. Kind of that same idea. But absolutely, any landscaper out there, and it's a great way to represent a client too. If you're going to be different than a lot of your competition. If you walk onto a property, commercial, residential, doesn't really matter, and you say, hey, look, before we do anything, I want to take a soil test and let's see what we have. And if you can walk the client out there and show them the soil, and you're like, hey, look, this is super sandy, the more you can have those conversations with a customer, it just makes your life easy in the long run.
The
Because they're
better.
going to understand. They want to understand what you're doing too, right? And I know that's not always feasible, and but in any chance you get to show and tell to a client, gives you an opportunity to say, hey, look, this is what we're facing. It may justify, like, it's going to be a little bit more expensive year one, but year two we're going to have a better product. So there's a lot of reasons I think that first visit, before you even pull the spreader off the back of the truck, you pull that probe, and just see what you got and send that test off. The lab we use is usually 48 to 72 hours, and that's including shipping time. So it's not like you're going to have to wait weeks. So just go ahead and get it. And if you haven't done it, do it today, tomorrow, go ahead and get it. So,
And let's say I'm a homeowner or I'm a landscaper that, yes, I know how to do maintenance, maybe how to treat turf, but I do a soil test. Now I receive the results
mhm,
with a bunch of numbers, negative, uh, all kind of letters and whatnot.
mhm.
There is any recommendation from your experience how someone can go through a soil test results and get a better understanding of that?
So the I do have to plug my company a little bit. The easy answer there is find your local Vereen store. And our people there will be more than happy to, we Casey up in Longs, Tyler down here in Bluffton. That's a service that we, and there are other um like hardware store type things that will walk through soil tests with you. If that's not an option, if you're in an area that doesn't have one of those, in South Carolina, your Clemson extension agent, it's great to just get them on the phone. In Georgia, I'm down in Georgia, so UGA, they have an extension service. Go to the extension office or pick up the phone and call them and say, hey, look, here's my soil test. I don't know what to do. Can you help me walk through this? And you can Google. Just be careful when you start Googling, because it's like going to WebMD. You're going to end up
Yeah.
going down a lot of rabbit holes. But
Deep web.
yeah, the short answer is find a trusted turf professional.
Call
To
Paul 1-800.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. And my card's on the desk somewhere down there in Bluffton, so they're welcome to call me, and you can ask Tyler. I love talking, and you know this. I love talking through soil tests. So
Yeah, I
um,
asked that question because the other day I was on a neighborhood that we manage, and one of the residents brought his soil results, soil testing. He sent it to I don't know where, and he said, "What is this?" Like, he was expecting like a letter or something
mhm.
telling him exactly, short
what to
terms
do, what to
what's
go.
going
Yeah.
on. Yeah,
Yeah.
he
Yeah.
just saw a bunch of numbers and whatnot, and so that's
And
why
some,
it came to my mind.
yeah, depending on who you use, there are services out there. And I'm very cautionary, on, like, there's a program I've seen on TV that you can send a soil test to, and then they're going to send you the treatment spat. Just, I like using independent. We use an independent lab. We like to treat the soil and tell you the recommendation, not just recommend our product. Now, most of the things we recommend, I supply and I can give you the solution, but find an independent lab. The extension services are pretty good. We use and we try to provide that service, but you can bring a dirt in a bucket to one of our stores, and we're going to take it from there and process it, and then we're going to give you recommendations off of that. The extension service, I know the Clemson extension service, if you use them, there are some recommendations on the bottom of that. They're very surface level. Um, it will give you some base recommendations. I think they don't have the time or to really dive deep into the soil. But it's a good starting point. And then a plug for you guys. Your best bet's to find a company that's reputable, and they'll come in and they can oftentimes do it a lot cheaper than, because if you have a 5,000 square foot yard and you need like K-Mag, for example, and you buy a 50-pound bag of K-Mag, you're set for like 5 years.
Pretty
Or you
much.
could just, yeah, you can hire a company to come in and they're just going to have the product to apply what you need right then. So there's a couple ways you could go about it, but I'm sure in my retirement years, I'll be trying to take care of my own lawn too. So
Yeah, having a good partner is a key.
it is 100%.
I go to start them. Awesome. So we talk about how great it is soil testing and how important it is monitor soil health and improve and having a good program. But the reality is that landscapers, lawn care companies, not everyone, but for the most part, are not doing it.
Mm-hmm.
What in your experience dealing with different companies and whatnot, um, what is your opinion about why people are holding on implementing these programs on their regular basis?
I think time's a problem there. Resources a lot of times. Especially in this current environment, this labor environment we're in now. I think it's still a very tough labor market. So finding the people and the time to one, take the soil test, ship them off, and then also, and here's where it really gets tough. On a large scale operation, you're not going to be able to each lawn have a different program. It's just impossible. I get that. It's even tough for me with some of my customers to say, hey, look, we've got Bermuda Zoysia St. Augustine over here, and we've got Centipede over here. And Centipede doesn't need near the amount of nitrogen that these guys do. So at least in a minimum, separate those out. And that's hard enough. So trying to tailor a program for, homeowner B over here and homeowner C. So what I tell, especially my residential customers, is use this as an opportunity for an upsell. And it is. It's an opportunity to say, you're going to be in our regular program. We tailor our program to our market in our area. And then for, the potassium that you need, or it's an upsell opportunity. And that's how I try to sell the soil testing program and soil health to one of my customers, that they can turn around and it becomes an opportunity for them to make a little extra, and they're going to get results. You upsell that to the customer, or in a commercial case, you make that part of your package. Like, hey, listen, at Vereen's, we're a value company. We're going to give you value. And that's what I try to tell my customers is, you're not going to be the cheapest lawn care, applicator out there, but you're going to be the best value, right? Because nobody else is doing that right now. Like you said, nobody else is going to that customer and actually talking about soil testing. You're setting yourself apart if you start that way. And like I said, I know it's extra effort, extra time, which are two highly valuable things right now. But I think the little bit of extra input up front, will pay off dividends in the long run. Just implementing that in, and then there's the other conversation of actually putting that to practice. but it's going to cost a little bit more, maybe that first year out the gate. But if you can save down the road on pesticides, you know, it's worth it. It's worth it in the long run. So that's the hard sell for me as the guy trying to sell the program is, hey, you're going to have to spend a little bit more the first year out the gate with a customer. Now with the residential, you can pass some of that cost to the customer once you explain it. But in the long run, if you're cutting your insecticide budget down 30%, you start throwing numbers to it. And you and I have done that. We've kind of looked at some of those numbers, and it ends up working over time. So
No, definitely, definitely.
just got to take that step.
Yeah,
So
yeah, 100%. And you mentioned it, and I think that was a very true statement. We know how important it is soil health, but unfortunately, reality is that it's not for everyone, right?
mm-hmm.
If you're a lawn care company, you watch cost and things like that, but you can offer that to the top, high profile clients where they really care about the health and long term relationship. I can see that soil health is where we see the most opportunity for long term customer success.
Absolutely.
Companies like maintenance, lawn cares, clients, like in your case, suppliers like Berins, focusing on this is where long term customer success is where I can see this happening. And in your experience, Paul, you know more than myself and probably most of us. Are there any technologies or trends that you are excited about in this space about soil testing, soil health?
So there are some new things out there. The farm world, the ag world is kind of what you kind of look at to see what eventually will trickle down to us in the lawn care world. The ag world is just such a big space that's where most of the money's put for research and development. And we kind of get the robotics that you guys have delved into. Like that's an example. They've been doing robotics on the ag world for 15 years now, right? Um, so drone technology, and I don't fully understand, but there are some metrics they can use with some infrared cameras. Um, and then there's a few, I don't know what they're called, but they're basically, it's a magnetic device that goes over the turf and can take some soil physical property readings. Not so much on the chemical side. You still, as far as I know right now, you still have to take a piece of dirt and send it off to do that. But now what I will say in that realm is the turnaround time. What used to take weeks takes hours now for soil test turnaround. So that's been good for us. But yeah, drone technology is something that we will see for multiple things. Stress scouting, property flyovers that, as your estimators are going out in the field and spending time, they'll be able to do that with a drone in the future and things like that. With a flyover and an infrared camera, they can see maybe sandier soils will stick out sometimes. So yeah, there are some things coming. I think just the whole world of AI, maybe implementing soil tests in individual areas and getting a big broad reading. I think AI is going to do some things for us in that realm. And then I can't not have the conversation of technologies on the fertilizer side and even our pest control products. Man, they've come a long way in the last 20 years. So yeah, on the positive side, I do see some things coming. And a conversation that we can't avoid. Regulatory regulations are coming. So this soil health conversation is going to be more required down the road, where you maybe not be able to apply. You look at Florida; they have blackout dates already. So they have to focus their nutrition in January through, I think it's May, and then June through August, or maybe even September. They can't apply any nitrogen.
Hydrogen.
So if you if you get your soil where it's basically helping produce its own for, nutrients and sustainable nutrients, that's a win in that situation. And that's coming more. I mean, we all know they're not going to, regulations aren't going backwards. They're moving forwards. Having that conversation now, I think it's a smart move on anybody's behalf to go ahead and just start preparing for what's coming.
Yeah, I think
sure.
you just touch a very important topic in the industry. Is
Hmm.
changing.
Hmm.
Government towns requesting be 100% organic, things like
Hmm.
that. So
Hmm.
focusing on 100% soil health will help to go through this new way of do lawn care. So yeah, definitely it's important to start, like you say, making some changes now so we can be ahead of the game, ahead of the curve when it is like 100% like a rule, a regulation, right? So we're ready. So if someone is listening to this podcast, Paul, and thinking, well, yes, it's great. I want to build a program like this. What could be the first move for this person? What's the first move to start building a good program?
So take the soil test. Go ahead and do that. Um, Look at your lawn. Look at what you have in the ground. Sandier soils are a little bit tougher to get in the right way. As heavy clay soils, they're both very tough. Those extremes are tough. So looking at your physical soil, sending off that soil test, and then writing down what your goals are. And that, to me, any integrated program is what is it you really want at the end? I mean, everybody can't, your cup there. We can't all have an Augusta National front yard, it would be a dream. But set your goals for what you want it to be, and then start working with a professional or your local counter professional, and weed free. What's your focus? Like, is it a lot? I see a lot more heavier landscape yards, so those are also opportunities for a good sustainable organic program. And we didn't talk about it. We talked turf most of the time because that's I guess my area. But
Your forte.
soil health in ornamental beds and even annual beds is a big deal too. Maybe even bigger in those because that's long-term health. So this can all be applied in that realm as well. Certain types of like azaleas, everybody loves azaleas, a men's corner at Augusta. That's been the topic of conversation for the last month. Well, it likes acidic soil. And you're not going to get a good azalea with a non-acidic soil. So if you don't know, then you don't know what to do. So
Exactly.
that soil test, I mean, it really is, I don't work for a soil testing company. I may sound like I do, but we send them off to a lab, and like I said, that'll give you that'll give you a big, like a map for what you need to do for the next 12 months. Yeah.
It's the Bible for your program,
It
pretty
really is.
much.
It really is. And it just lays it out there. And over time, I mean, you guys have done really well with interpreting, and the homeowner, a few conversations with somebody that knows it, whether it's an extension agent or a turf professional, and the homeowner can adapt to and read as well. And it gets them involved. I think it's a cool thing. They understand what they're doing. If you were growing corn in a garden, you would, I mean, and that's what sometimes I talk to people like, more people soil test when they're about to plant cucumbers and corn and all that than they ever do for their lawn. And I'm like, they're all crops,
Right.
so it's the same thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, start with that soil test. Find a guy or gal that knows soil and talk to them, and you're well on your way to the soil health world. So
Awesome. So now I got the soul test. I'm doing everything I can, but I'm struggling to have results.
mhm.
What advice could you give to someone that it is struggling to have some good program, either because lack of results or they're dealing with a client that requires or wants to have results in like in 2 3 days instead long term. So what kind of advice could you provide or give to someone like this in this
So
situation?
and that's the tough part. Depending on what you inherit as your soil, and we rarely get to choose our soil when we purchase a home. Um, it could take a while. So some advice I would give: one, if you're a professional and you're dealing with a homeowner that wanting quicker results, take the time to educate. Um, you know, like I said, take them out there when you pull that soil probe, and say, hey, look, here is your soil and an ideal soil, and you can have a picture on your phone of a nice humic, just good looking soil, and say, this is what it's supposed to look like, and this is what yours looks like. We will work our way to get you there. But don't be afraid to have that conversation. And I always, kind of one of my tactics is, um, it's like I think it's called the negative reverse, where I almost like undersell it when we start out. Like, hey, this could take a while. I don't expect to see results for 2 or 3 apps, maybe more. Um, and then when you start seeing results a little earlier, you've undersold and over delivered it, under promised, over delivered. Just conversations. For the homeowner, same kind of idea. Take pictures of your yard when you start, because if you see it every single day, you might not notice progress. But if you go back and look at pictures, I used to have to do that as a golf superintendent. Like, I was always my toughest critic when I rode, so I would document with pictures, and I could look back and say, oh well, yeah, yesterday it doesn't look a lot better than it did yesterday, but it looks better than it did 6 months ago. So with a homeowner that's seeing it every day, that's a good thing to do. Go out there and snap a picture of it. Look back in a few months, and you'll see that you're seeing a little bit of progress. So
Yeah. So education is
yeah,
is
it's the key.
is the
Yeah.
key, right? Education for ourselves and also educate our clients. That's gonna go long run
Hmm.
on this whole matter. And we talk a lot of things, Paul, about the soul health and soul testing and everything. And we both agree that having a good partner, a good resource to go out and maybe get some help or questions. So uh, let's talk about Vereen's and
Hmm.
Paul. What Vereen's? Where is Vereen's? Where is Vereen's? Where we can find them? Where we can find you? For the listeners in the area, Florida and Georgia, do you want to talk about a little bit
Yeah, yeah,
Vereen's and your role in there?
absolutely, absolutely. So I've been at Marines for it'll be 4 years, I think, in November. I was a golf superintendent for the majority of my life, I guess you could say, at this up to this point. And so I joined Vereen's. I was a customer of Vereen's first, which is pretty cool. It's easy to sell for a company that I bought from, because we're family owned. Andy and Andy, two sisters are owners. Frankie Vereen, their dad, founded the company 60. What is it? 2025. So 63 years ago. So we've been around for a while. Vereen's has traditionally been mostly in the Myrtle Beach area. That's where the headquarters is. Kind of cool thing since I've been at Vereen's is that the model shifted a little bit. We're opening satellite branches. So for the homeowner out there, we have a branch in Greer, South Carolina, one in Bluffton. We're currently near, I guess the Havertys is the easiest way to say, across from Moss Creek, but we will be moving in the next year, kind of outgrowing that space down there. Just opened one up in Keystone Heights, Florida. It's more of a distribution center right now. Keystone Heights is very remote, but there's some homes around there. We can help them out. And then more to come as far as those satellite branches. There is one in Kingstree as well, which is where our fertilizer blending facility is. Our store manager there sells a lot of ag fertilizer. Those are guys that are bringing tests in for corn and soybeans and things like that. That area is very, very farm centric. So sells a lot of horse feed too. So yeah, so our satellite stores service homeowners, but they also service you guys, right? We're servicing our landscape customers, our golf customers, our sod farm customers. It just puts us closer. And what we value is customer service. That's kind of our MO. I know that's cliche sounding, but really it is. It's,
It
you
is.
know, we're not our goal. And it's what we talked about earlier. Like, we're a family owned company. We're not massive. We're growing, but we're not massive. So we're not always going to be the cheapest in town, but I promise you we'll be the best value. We'll get it to where you want it, when you want it. And then all of our reps, you could do this podcast with any of our reps. We all like to talk turf and dirt and all the fun stuff. So we feel like we're part of the team, the resource as well. Um, we just hired Mr. Turfbeard, which I think maybe you and him will have a future conversation possibly, but he was with a fertilizer company before, and he's bringing to the table a different level of expertise on, fertilizer and the proper use of fertilizer. We're blending some cool things with chicken compost and molasses and some synthetics that you can kind of get this one and done package of all you need for soil health. So we do. We believe soil health at Vereen's, and we show that kind of in what we sell. We're not just there to sell you whatever whatever. We're going to sell you a solution, and that's kind of
Right.
what we're after.
The
So,
experience of a good solution for
mhm,
success in
yep,
either homeowner or a company.
absolutely.
And where people or listeners can find Paul specific.
So the easiest way to get a hold of me, I'll give you an email address for one, paul@vereens.com. I work mostly out of the Bluffton store. That's my support store, though now we've added Florida. So Jacksonville is one of my territories. I also work from there. But if you go to our Bluffton store, Tyler's there and he can give you my contact information. And my cell phone's on my card. I'm not scared to take a cell phone call from anybody that wants to talk about grass. And yeah, I live in Richmond Hill, Georgia. So I'm Charleston to Jacksonville. Kind of keep my life pretty close to 95. It seems like. I wish they'd improve that road in South Carolina, but maybe one day. But yeah, usually up and around that area. So,
Awesome.
and it's easy to get. If you go to our website, which is easyvereens.com, you can find all of us reps on there, and our store numbers. Yeah. And again, our store staff loves to talk grass too. So, they get bored sometimes. Go in there and hang out with them and ask questions,
They
challenge
need some
Tyler.
conversations.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely, they do. So
That's good. Awesome,
yeah,
Paul. Awesome. Well, thank
no,
you. Thank you so
definitely.
much, Paul, for taking your time to sit down with me and talk about soil health and how important it is to just have a beautiful lawn, right?
It is. Yeah,
We all know that, but sometimes we just focus on quick results,
absolutely.
and then we stress about why it doesn't long last more.
Hmm. Hmm. Absolutely.
So thank you so much for your knowledge, for your
No,
time,
thanks for having me.
I mean, just can't wait to see you again. Okay.
Absolutely. Take
All
care.
right. Thank you, everyone. Appreciate it.